Hi, this is Destiny Serta again with my first official video for my YouTube channel, The Teacher Mom. And if you missed my introduction video or why I chose to start this channel, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a recap. I am a former educator. I was a teacher. I taught 2nd grade and 5th grade, and I learned a lot of strategies and just habits that I incorporated in my classroom that I thought this is something that I could incorporate in my home when I start my family. Now that I am expecting my first baby, I am going to be staying at home and hoping to apply all of these with my baby as I am at home, as I saw them being very beneficial in the classroom. And you don't need to be a teacher, you don't need to have any special certification or license to practice all of these things. They're just really good strategies that will help you get through everyday things. And I thought it was good information. I didn't want to keep it to myself, so I decided to share it and create this channel. So you can see up at the top I have Ask a Question at this Google Slides kind of Google Hangout place, and you could also just leave a comment below and just share your thoughts, share your questions. I may not be able to get through everything in the video, but communication is key, and I am here to help as much as I can. So the first strategy that I want to share with you is begin with the end in mind, and it's actually habit number 2 of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. It's actually a very good book and helps just really force anyone to take ownership of their personal growth, and it can be used in any walk of life and in any circumstance, really. So let's get into it. So what is begin with the end in mind? It is a goal-setting strategy. It helps you set a vision, and ultimately it avoids you going in circles and it avoids unclear expectations or an unclear path. It really just helps you think and set into perspective where you are now, where it is that you want to be. It could be in your job, it could be with your family, within your relationships, with your health, weight, medications maybe that you might be taking that you want to get off. And so you set yourself a goal. But setting the goal is not the only thing. The goal is just kind of help you create a vision of where it is that you want to be. Active, intentional part is the steps that you're going to take to get there. So let's go a little bit into more specific examples and start off with one, and then we'll go into how teachers use it in the classroom. So let's take, for example, something that I do on a weekly basis with my husband. We set a menu, and mainly just to give ourselves a clear path and avoid going in circles in the grocery store, because we've all been there. So we talk about it preferably on a Sunday, if not on a Monday, or whenever we get to it in the week. Most of the time it's Sundays. And we talk about what we want to have that week, or if we're going to be eating out or anything like that. So we make a menu for the week. I make my grocery list. I check my fridge with what I have. I check my pantry with seasonings and sauces, anything, pasta. And I make a list, and I just go out and buy the things that I need. It also helps me avoid buying things that I don't need. So I've got my menu. I know what I'm going to be cooking that night or the next night, and I've got a clear expectation and a clear path in the grocery store. I even kind of have a way of where I go in, where I start, and where I finish. It helps cut down my grocery bill and my time at the grocery store. And we don't waste food. We hardly have leftovers or just enough for lunch the next day. And it really has helped us not be wasteful. So that is a real life example of kind of begin with the end in mind. Our end is our dinner every single night. Our plan is grocery shopping, getting those ingredients, getting whatever we need, and then cooking each meal on each planned day. And it really does save us a lot of time. It's one of my favorite things that we do, actually. So, how does a teacher use begin with the end in mind? we start off with this question. Okay, what do we want our students to know by the end of today? The lesson cycle. Sometimes a lesson can take 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, or the unit, if we're going to stick to a whole unit. And obviously that depends on the grade level, subject area, and all of that. And I say we because most teachers plan in groups. We collaborate with each other. We feed off of each other. And it really does help. So I'm saying if you want to plan this with your husband or other mom friends that you have and just really work together, it would really, really help and it would be very beneficial. So as an educator, we usually have standards or a curriculum that we are following. So we see that as our end goal. So we want our students, this is an expectation that us as educators have to get our students to this standard, to this skill. And we plan according to getting our kids there. But another thing that we plan, just like planning our menu and planning our meal for each day, we plan assessments and checking for understanding when planning. So we are going to be checking along the way, are students getting there? Because that will determine, do we need to go back and start over again? Do we need to slow down? Okay, they got it. Do we need to speed up? And also with our assessments, especially where I'm in the state of Texas, so we've got our state mandated assessment that our students have to take at the end of the year. And so we use that as our kind of leeway. So we know that students are going to have to answer questions in this manner. They're going to have to know this vocabulary. So we need to incorporate that into our lessons when we're planning. And I also put on here research, because even though I'm an educator, even though I've taught for more than 1 year, even though we've got lots of practice, we always research for better resources, for better books, we ask each other. It's part of the collaboration. We ask each other, what have you done? Has it worked? Has it not worked? How can we use it? I used this book last year, but it didn't really work. Let's try to find another book. Or the kids are familiar with this story. Let's find another one. You're probably going to have to do some research on your behalf to help your kids get there. So this is how a teacher uses it. Let's go on to see how you could use it with your kids at home. So you would set a goal for your child or your children, and then you'd ask yourself this question: what can I do to help my child get there? It must be a realistic goal, so take into consideration your child's age, your child's abilities, your child's interests. That's very important. Create some type of checkpoint along the way or something to keep you on tabs. This may actually just be an alarm. You want to do something by a certain time, so you set your alarm to make sure that you get to it. Set yourself a little reminder. You have to model it and you have to practice it, so you have to stick with it. Kids don't get things usually the first time. They have to do things repeatedly, and also do your own research. Okay, like I said, I'm not an expert on everything, and there's lots of resources out there that can help you. So let's go into some examples. So one example would be to getting your kids to bed on time. And that might even help you to get to bed on time. Cleaning up after dinner. You know, we talked about in the first video about wanting our kids to become independent. So cleaning up after themselves is going to be one of those things, because when they get to college or living by themselves, they're going to have to clean up after themselves, and instilling those habits is very good. Trying new foods, especially whenever you have a new baby. And you're introducing solid foods for the first time, and they're getting used to new textures. Or you have a picky eater on your hands, okay? Or maybe you have a school-age child and just getting them to do their homework just isn't working, or getting them to read every night. I will be posting another video that is going to be very beneficial for this as well. It's called I Do, We Do, They Do. It's another strategy that teachers use. We'll get into more into that later. But the I do part is you actually modeling it for your child. So you are the first teacher that your child has ever had. Think of all the things that you taught them how to do. You are still going to continue to be a role model for them. So let's go more into a specific detail, specific example. So here's a goal. Get to bed by 9 p.m. So here's are your steps. What am I going to have to do to make sure that happens? Bath time by 8 p.m. I'm going to have to set an alarm just to make sure that I don't get sidetracked with anything. Maybe that alarm will even help your child. Okay, bedtime story by 8:30. Okay, so bath time, brushing teeth, changing into pajamas, brushing hair, all of that, I want it to take about 30 minutes. Lights out by 8:45. You don't want to take too long in your bedtime story either, to where you get them excited and energized. So let's try to keep it short. And lights out by 8:15. You may want to lay in bed with your child, or maybe they're old enough to lay in bed by themselves, but let's try to keep a quiet house until child falls asleep. Bear in mind, they're probably not going to fall asleep by 9 p.m. the first, second, or third night, but the routine will be there. And then here are some research tips. Maybe a nightlight would help. Drinking a glass of warm milk while they're reading their bedtime story. A sound soother. Also talk to your child, okay? We are going to try to get to bed by 9 p.m. every single night this week. We're going to take bath time, bedtime story. We're going to turn out the lights at this time, just so that they know what is expected of them and that you have these expectations and that you are going to stick to them. Also, you may want to give your child some say in what's going on. They want schedules, they do want some type of structure, but they also want to feel like they have some say in it. So maybe they get to pick their pajamas, or maybe they get to pick their bedtime story, the book, whatever it may be, and it kind of gives them a sense of that they're a part of this decision making as well. And practice. To stick to the schedule even if the child fights it. So this is the modeling part. You are going to have to stick to this schedule. If you want your child to stick to the schedule, you're going to have to stick to this schedule. So it takes planning, it does take work, it does take time, but this is what we do in the classroom every single day. We have routines, we have expectations, we're on a schedule. We are doing math from 10 to 11. We are doing reading. So students are familiar with this time schedule. And a lot of the beginning of the year is just setting those expectations and setting that classroom environment, setting up those expectations. And it's a very important way to start the year. Because by the end of the year, I want my classroom to be a well-oiled machine, where my students know what we're doing, when we're doing it, how long they're going to have, how to work in groups, how to work independently. So all of those expectations are set, and I've got alarms, reminders, and I try to stick to it as best as I can. Well, there's got to be some flexibility, obviously, but anyway, this is what Begin with the End in Mind is. I hope that it helps set a little bit of perspective in your home and will help you maybe set some goals with your kids, set some goals for yourself or for your whole family, and it will definitely help your house run a little bit smoother. Not the first day probably, but stick to it, and I am sure that you will see results. Anyway, thank you, and I hope it helps.